that according to the National Archives and Records Administration in Washington, D.C., 93% of businesses have lost availability in their data center for 10 days or more have filed for bankruptcy within 1 year. The cost of one episode of downtime can cripple an organization. Take, for example, an e-business. In a case of downtime, not only would they potentially lose thousands or even millions of dollars in lost revenue, but their top competitor is only a mouse click away. Therefore, loss is translated not only to lost revenue, but also to a loss in customer loyalty. The challenge of maintaining a highly available network is no longer just the responsibility of the IT departments. Rather, it extends out to management and department heads, as well as the boards which govern company policy. For this reason, having a sound understanding of the factors that lead to high availability, threats to availability, and ways to measure availability is imperative regardless of your business sector. Measuring business value begins first with an understanding of the physical infrastructure. Physical infrastructure is the foundation upon which information technology and telecommunication networks reside. Physical infrastructure consists of racks, power, cooling, fire prevention and security, management, and services. Business value for an organization, in general terms, is based on three core objectives: increasing revenue, reducing costs, and better utilizing assets. Regardless of the line of business, these three objectives ultimately lead to improved earnings and cash flow. Investments in physical infrastructure are made because they both directly and indirectly impact these three business objectives. Managers purchase items such as generators, air conditioners, physical security systems, and uninterruptible power supplies to serve as insurance policies. For any network or data center, there are risks of downtime from power, security, and thermal problems, and investing in physical infrastructure mitigates these and other risks. So how does this impact the three core business objectives: revenue, cost, and assets? Revenue streams are slowed or stopped. Business costs and expenses are incurred, and assets are underutilized or underproductive when systems are down. Therefore, the more efficient the strategy is in reducing downtime from any cause, the more value it has to the business in meeting all three objectives. Historically, assessment of physical infrastructure business value was based on two core criteria: availability and upfront costs. Increasing the availability or uptime of the physical infrastructure system and ultimately of the business processes allows a business to continue to bring in revenue and better optimize the use or productivity of assets. Imagine a credit card processing company whose systems are unavailable. Credit card purchases cannot be processed, halting the revenue stream for the duration of the downtime. In addition, employees are not able to be productive without their systems online, and minimizing the upfront cost of the physical infrastructure results in a greater return on that investment. If the physical infrastructure cost is low and the risk or cost of downtime is high, the business case becomes easier to justify. While these arguments still hold true, today's rapidly changing IT environments are dictating two additional criteria for assessing physical infrastructure business value. One is agility. Business plans must be agile to deal with changing market conditions, opportunities, and environmental factors. Investments that lock resources limit the ability to respond in a flexible manner. And when this flexibility or agility is not present, lost opportunity is the predictable result. The other is sustainability. It is imperative that data center owners have a solid action plan to achieve sustainability goals and commitments. They should develop a plan that includes a bold and actionable strategy with clear objectives and prioritized action. They should implement efficient designs, which invest in technologies that improve energy efficiency and lower carbon footprint, like SF6 free switchgear and liquid cooling, which could reduce overall IT and infrastructure energy consumption by 15%. Drive operational efficiency with connected systems to collect data that provides visibility, tracks energy usage, and benchmarks performance. Buy renewable energy, which can be accomplished in 3 main ways: credit, on-site build, and off-site build. And decarbonize the supply chain. Choose vendors that embrace circular economy with circularity designed into the products. A term that is commonly used when discussing availability is the term 5 nines. Although often used, this term is often very misleading and often misunderstood. 5 nines refers to a network that is accessible 99.999% of the time. However, it is a rather misleading term. We'll explain why a little later on in the course. There are many additional terms associated with availability, business continuity, and disaster recovery. Before we go any further, let's define some of these terms. Reliability is the ability of a system or component to perform its required functions under stated conditions for a specific period of time. Availability, on the other hand, is the degree to which a system or component is operational and accessible when required for use. It can be viewed as the likelihood that the system or component is in a state to perform its required function under given conditions at a given instant in time. Availability is determined by a system's reliability as well as its recovery time when a failure does occur. When systems have long, continuous operating times, failures are inevitable. Availability is often looked at because when a failure does occur, the critical variable now becomes how quickly the system can be recovered. In the data center, having a reliable system design is the most critical variable, but when a failure occurs, the most important consideration must be getting the IT equipment and business processes up and running as fast as possible to keep downtime to a minimum. Upon considering any availability or reliability value, one should always ask for a definition of failure. Moving forward without a clear definition of failure is like advertising the fuel efficiency of an automobile as miles per tank without defining the capacity of the tank in liters or gallons. To address this ambiguity, one should start with one of the following 2 basic definitions of a failure. According to the IEC, there are 2 basic definitions of a failure. The termination of the ability of a product as a whole to perform its required function, the termination of the ability of any individual component to perform its required function, but not the termination of the ability of the product as a whole to perform. MTBF, mean time between failure, is a basic measure of a system's reliability. It is typically represented in units of hours. The higher the MTBF number is, the higher the reliability of the product. MTTR, mean time to recover, is the expected time to recover a system from failure. This may include the time it takes to diagnose the problem, the time it takes to get a repair technician on site, and the time it takes to physically repair the system. Similar to MTBF, MTTR is represented in units of hours. MTTR impacts availability and not reliability. The longer the MTTR, the worse off a system is. Simply put, if it takes longer to recover a system from a failure, the system is going to have a lower availability. As we mentioned before, 5 nines is a misleading term because the use of the term has become diluted. 5 nines has been used to refer to the amount of time that the data center systems are available. In other words, a data center that has achieved 5 nines is functioning 99.999% of the time. The frequency of failure is only one part of the equation. The other part of the availability equation is how long it takes to recover from a failure. Let's take, for example, two data centers that are both considered 99.999% available. In 1 year, data center A lost power once, but it lasted for a full 5 minutes. Data center B lost power 10 times, but for only 30 seconds each time. Both data centers were without power for a total of 5 minutes each. The missing detail is the recovery time. Anytime systems fail, there is a recovery time to get back to operational state, which includes the time for servers to be rebooted, data to be recovered, and corrupted systems to be repaired. The mean time to recover process could take minutes, hours, days, or even weeks. Now, if you consider again the two data centers that have experienced downtime, you will see that data center B has had 10 instances of outages that will actually have a much longer duration of downtime than the data center that only had one occurrence of downtime. Data center B must recover from the failure 10 times. It is because of this dynamic that reliability is equally important to the discussion of availability. Reliability of a data center speaks to the frequency of downtime in a given time frame. There is an inverse proportional relationship in that as time increases, reliability decreases. Availability, however, is only a percentage of downtime in a given duration. It should be obvious that there are a number of factors that affect data center availability and reliability. Some of these include AC power conditions, lack of adequate cooling in the data center, equipment failure, natural and artificial disasters, and human errors. Let's first look at the AC power conditions. Power quality anomalies are organized into 7 categories based on wave shape: transients, interruptions, sag or undervoltage, swell or overvoltage, waveform distortion, voltage fluctuations, and frequency variations. Another factor that poses a significant threat to availability is the lack of cooling in the IT environment. IT equipment, like servers and storage, generate heat. In the data center environment, where a mass quantity of heat is being generated, the potential exists for significant downtime unless this heat is removed from the space. Cooling systems are needed in a data center to remove this heat. However, if the cooling is not distributed properly, hotspots can occur. Hotspots within the data center further threaten availability. In addition, inadequate cooling significantly detracts from the lifespan and availability of IT equipment. It is recommended that when designing the data center layout, a hot aisle, cold aisle configuration is used. Hotspots can also be alleviated by the use of properly sized cooling systems, supplemental spot coolers, and air distribution units. The health of IT equipment is an important factor in ensuring a highly available system, as equipment failures pose a significant threat to availability. Failures can occur for a variety of reasons, including damage caused by prolonged improper utility power. Other such causes are from prolonged exposure to elevated or decreased temperatures, humidity, component failure, and equipment age. Disasters also pose a significant threat to availability. Hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, and often subsequent blackouts that occur after these disasters all create tremendous opportunity for downtime. In many of these cases, downtime is prolonged due to damage sustained by the power grid or the physical site of the data center itself. According to Gartner Group, the largest single cause of downtime is human error or personnel issues. One of the most common causes of intermittent downtime in the data center is poor training. Data center staff or contractors should be trained on procedures for application failures, hangs, system updates, upgrades, and other tasks that can create problems if not done correctly. Another problem is poor documentation. As staff sizes have shrunk, and with all the changes in the data center due to rapid product cycles, it's harder and harder to keep the documentation current. Patches can go awry as incorrect software versions are updated. Hardware fixes can fail if the wrong parts are used. Another area of potential downtime is management of systems. System management has fragmented from a single point of control to vendors, partners, ASPs, outsourced suppliers, and even a number of internal groups. With a variety of vendors, contractors, and technicians freely accessing the IT equipment, errors are inevitable. Technologies like IA and data analytics are enabling a reduction in human error as maintenance programs shift from calendar-based to condition-based. It is important to understand the cost of downtime to a business, and specifically how that cost changes as a function of outage duration. Lost revenue is often the most visible and easily identified cost of downtime, but it is only the tip of the iceberg when discussing the real costs to the organization. In many cases, the cost of downtime per hour remains constant. In other words, a business that loses at a rate of $100 per hour in the first minute of downtime will also lose at that same rate of $100 per hour after an hour of downtime. An example of a company that might experience this type of profile is a retail store, where a constant revenue stream is present. When the systems are down, there is a relatively constant rate of loss. Some businesses, however, may lose the most money after the first 500 milliseconds of downtime, and then lose very little thereafter. For example, a semiconductor fabrication plant loses the most money in the first moments of an outage because when the process is interrupted, the silicon wafers that were in production can no longer be used and must be scrapped. And others yet may lose at a lower rate for a short outage, since revenue is not lost, but simply delayed. And as the duration lengthens, there is an increased likelihood that the revenue will not be recovered. Regarding customer satisfaction, a short duration may often be acceptable, but as the duration increases, more customers will become increasingly upset. An example of this might be a car dealership, where customers are willing to delay a transaction for a day. With significant outages, however, public knowledge often results in damaged brand perception and inquiries into the company's operations. All of these activities result in a downtime cost that begins to accelerate quickly as the duration becomes longer. Costs associated with downtime can be classified as direct and indirect. Direct costs are easily identified and measured in terms of hard dollars. Examples include wages and costs of employees that are idle due to the unavailability of the network. Although some employees will be idle, their salaries and wages continue to be paid. Other employees may still do some work, but their output will likely be diminished. Lost revenues are the most obvious cost of downtime because if you cannot process customers, you cannot conduct business. Electronic commerce magnifies the problem, as e-commerce sales are entirely dependent on system availability. Wages and cost increases due to induced overtime or time spent checking and fixing systems is another example of a direct cost. The same employees that were idled by the system failure are probably the same employees that will go back to work and recover the system via data entry. They not only have to do their day job of processing current data, but they must also re-enter any data that was lost due to the system crash, or enter new data that was handwritten during a system outage. This means additional hours of work, most often on an overtime basis. Depending on the nature of the affected systems, the legal costs associated with downtime can be significant. For example, if downtime problems result in a significant drop in share price, shareholders may initiate a class action suit if they believe that management and the board were negligent in protecting vital assets. In another example, if two companies form a business partnership in which one company's ability to conduct business is dependent on the availability of the other company's systems, then depending on the legal structure of the partnership, the first company may be liable to the second for profits lost during any significant downtime event. Indirect costs are not easily measured, but impact the business just the same. In 2000, Gartner Group estimated that 80% of all companies calculating downtime were including indirect costs in their calculations for the first time. Examples of indirect costs include reduced customer satisfaction, lost opportunity of customers that may have gone to direct competitors during the downtime event, damaged brand perception, and negative public relations. A business's downtime costs are directly related to the industry sectors. For example, energy and telecommunications organizations event, damaged brand perception, and negative public relations. A business's downtime costs are directly related to the industry sectors. For example, energy and telecommunications organizations may experience lost revenues on the order of $2 to $3 million an hour. Manufacturing, financial institutions, and telecommunications organizations. For example, energy and telecommunications organizations may experience lost revenues on the order of $2 to $3 million an hour. Manufacturing, financial institutions, information technology, insurance, retail, and pharmaceuticals all stand to lose over $1 million an hour. One report from the Ponemon Institute in 2016 says downtime costs between $5,600 and $9,000 per minute on average. The impact of your service downtime varies from company to company, what its service is used for, how its customers are impacted, and much more. There are many ways to calculate cost of downtime for an organization. For example, one way to estimate the revenue lost due to a downtime event is to look at normal hourly sales and then multiply that figure by the number of hours of downtime. Remember, however, that this is only one component of a larger equation and by itself seriously underestimates the true loss. Another example is loss of productivity. The most common way to calculate the cost of lost productivity is to first take an average of the hourly salary, benefits, and overhead costs for the affected group. Then multiply that figure by the number of hours of downtime. Because companies are in the business to earn profits, the value employees contribute is usually greater than the cost of employing them. Therefore, this method provides only a very conservative estimate of the labor cost of downtime. To stay competitive in today's global marketplace, businesses must strive to achieve high levels of availability and reliability. Power outages, inadequate cooling, natural and artificial disasters, and human errors pose a significant barrier to high availability. The direct and indirect costs of downtime in many business sectors can be exorbitant and often is enough to bankrupt many organizations. Therefore, it's critical for businesses today to calculate their level of availability in order to reduce risks and increase overall reliability and availability. Thank you for participating in this course. To stay competitive in today's global market, thank you for participating in this course. Welcome to examining fire protection methods in the data center. For best viewing results, we recommend that you maximize your browser window now. The screen controls allow you to navigate through the e-learning experience. Using your browser controls may disrupt the normal play of the course.